This program is made possible by American Senior Benefits Wichita is all about your peace of mind. We specialize in asset protecting, safeguarding your health, planning your estate, and preserving your freedom of choice. We're here to work through all of this with you. American Senior Benefits Wichita proudly supports PBS Kansas. The Candle Club, a place where friends, food, and music come together. Currently, we offer live entertainment every night except Sundays. Enjoy our delicious specialty appetizers and the Candle Club Signature Prime Rib. More about upcoming events at candleclubwichita.com. Home Health and Hospice of Kansas is a locally owned and community-based provider. We offer quality health care to our patients and families, complete with love, warmth, and compassion. We'll take care of all of the details for you. More information at kansashomehealth.com. Welcome to Cedric Plaza Retirement Community. Our living options are designed to suit your specific needs and activities that you're sure to love. We believe you'll be able to see yourself here, enjoying time with friends and family. For more information, cedricplaza.org.
Welcome to Empowering Seniors. I'm Catherine Ambrose, and I have the pleasure of sitting here with Larry Hatteberg. Larry, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely my pleasure.
One of the reasons why we wanted to bring you on is because of all the beautiful stories you've done over the years with Cake Television, and then you've brought them over to PBS. So I understand that you probably have the longest tenure in broadcast television here in Kansas.
Well, certainly in the news department.
In the news department.
Absolutely. 51 years is a long time, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And what I tell people, I think the mark if you enjoy your career is if you can look back on it and say, if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it all over again, and I would.
That's wonderful. Nice to not have regrets and to just have that. True. And so what are you doing these days?
Well, I retired in 2014, and I always hate to use the word retired. A, because I don't think anyone should retire. And B, I think you should have a life after you leave your main job. A life of work that you enjoy and the work that you want to do, and I'm doing that now. I do a lot of what they call street photography, some in this country, some overseas. And we're continuing with the Hatteberg's People series that's now running on PBS Kansas, Channel 8, and having a great time with it. And I don't want to give up the photography. I don't want to give up the life that I enjoyed with the technology of photography, with the creative aspect of photography, and most important, with meeting the people that you meet along the way. Because as I tell people, when I did a Hatteberg's People story, they were like teachers to me, and I was their student. And I would learn about life from all of these people who I interviewed. So at this point in my career, I think I probably have a doctorate degree in life from interviewing these several thousand people.
Well, very good. How did you select the people that you interviewed?
People always ask me that. I subscribe to many of the small town newspapers in Kansas. And I would see a story in there that maybe was just a 1 or 2 paragraph story that I thought would have legs to it and have a broader meaning. And so I would research those stories and see if they would make a good choice as a Hatteberg's People. I wasn't interested in people who were necessarily eccentric or anything like that. I was interested in people who had a story to tell that I could tell. I always felt that the people who I did a story on were like teachers, and I was their student. And that's how I really chose the people, because I felt that perhaps they had something that we could all learn from. And if I was learning, then hopefully the person at home via the television was learning about something about life that may or may not help them, but I hoped it would.
Mm-hmm. How many years did you do Hatteberg's People?
Hatteberg's People started in 1974 and really continues to this day. There is a story behind it that not many people know. I was doing these little feature stories for Cake TV prior to 1974. I started there in 1963, I know, a million years ago. The general manager at that time was a visionary broadcaster by the name of Martin Umansky. an imposing man, incredibly smart man, journalist from the University of Missouri, and he controlled Cake Television. He started Cake TV. Very influential man. And he came to me one day and he said, Larry, I want to franchise your stories. We want to run them at the same time on television, the same day every week, and we're going to call it Hatteberg's People. And I said, Martin, let's not call it Hatteberg's People. I'm gratified that you want to do this, but let's not call it Hatteberg's People because that sounds so egocentric. And he looked down at me in only a way that this very imposing man could look at you. He was very tall. He looked down at me and he said, Larry, I sign your check. We're calling it Hatteberg's People. So that's how Hatteberg's People was born. I would have never called it that. But he's the one who really changed my life with that series. And after we started doing the series, it just took off, and I've been very fortunate and very lucky since.
Early in your career, you were interviewing a lot of seniors, so you took a great interest in seniors. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, and as we've said in the past, I've done stories on people I've done Hatteberg's People on a 9-year-old. I've done Hatteberg's People on 14-year-olds. But people remember the older people, and there's a reason for that. When you're young, in the teenage, or when you're in your 20s, or even in your 30s, you know the power of the media, and you've been subjected to television all your life, and you know it's a powerful medium, so you guard yourself. Older people reach a point in life, you don't care what people think about you. You don't care. There's no filter here, and they tell you exactly what they think, whether you want to hear it or not, in sometimes some very unfiltered terms. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed hearing from these people. And older people have life experiences that younger people don't have. And I would guess the Hatteberg's People series is probably 50-50, 50% young, 50% old. Well, what people remember are the older people because they love hearing those people talk from the heart, unfiltered about life. And I think that's why it's remembered that way.
What did you learn?
The biggest life lesson I've learned is first impressions. When you meet somebody for the first time and you look at them and they start to talk to you, we all get an impression. We think we know what's going on. I met a guy who lived in a hole in the ground for 40 years, the dirtiest man I have ever met in my life, hadn't had a bath in 25, maybe 30 years.
I don't know where I'd find a better place to live.
His skin was growing into the shirt that he was wearing. They were becoming one. I'd never seen that in a human before. I learned more from him than I have from people with money or powerful people or really anybody else in life. He taught me what was important in life. And he's told me to watch the sunrise and the sunset. But here's a guy who had what we would consider nothing in life. And I felt he was one of the richest people I ever met. I spent a day with him, and I didn't want to leave. I was learning too much from this old, dirty man who lived in a hole in the ground. First impression was, he's nuts. But he wasn't. He was incredibly smart, and he was living the life that he wanted to live on his terms. He didn't have to live in a hole in the ground. He wanted to. But as he told me, he said, Larry, every morning I get up and I watch the sunrise. Bet you don't watch sunrise either, do you, boy? That's what he called me. I said, no, sir, I don't have time. I'm too busy. And he just shook his head and he said, after the sun gets up a little bit in the sky, the animals start to come in, the critters come in. I got names for all of them. And he said, but there are these 3 deer, and they'll come right up to me and they'll eat right out of my hand. Hey, boy, you ever look in the eyes of a wild thing? No, sir, I haven't. His name was Ernie Dittemore, and old Ernie just shook his head like I just didn't understand about anything. And to this very day, if I watch a sunrise and if I watch a sunset, I see Ernie's picture next to that sunrise and sunset. I've never forgotten him. And I think about him really a lot, much more than any of the other stories that I did, because he was real, because he lived the life that he wanted to live, and he was the happiest. And I meet a lot of happy people. I'm a happy guy, you're a happy person, everybody's a happy person. But he was the only person I've ever met who was truly content with his life. He was happy and he was content. You know, how can I be content when a new iPhone comes out? You got to have that new iPhone, you know. None of us are really content. He was, because he had the sunrise and the sunset.
Sometimes it's hard for people to understand that so many people are happy, and they may focus on a particular ache or pain or the loss of a spouse, or lots of things, not feeling as close to their busy kids as they might like to be. So what would your thoughts be on how to adapt and have a little more contentment, and what that would do for you?
I think each individual person has to find what makes them happy, whether it's gardening or stamp collecting or walking or going to the gym. You have to find out what makes you happy and concentrate on that. And I mean really concentrate on it. Everybody has pain in their life from something. All of us do. We humans can't get away from it. But it's the way you deal with it. If it's the loss of a spouse, then you join clubs where you meet other people, people who maybe have the same interest as you do, and get talking. You can't just sit in your house and pull the shades and say, woe is me. I mean, you can, but it's not an answer. And sometimes that's very hard to do, and I get that. But you have to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. I don't think you can wait for other people to come and tap on your shoulder and say, hey, you need to get it moving. You've got to do it yourself. And if you don't do it yourself, the motivation has to come from within. And you can either sit there in the dark or you can search for the sun. I like to search for the sun.
I often think about what a great example it is to younger generations. Could be a neighbor or someone that you have an impact on. Like Ernie had an impact on you for your entire life. By pulling yourself up and getting out there, you can really make an impact more than you might realize.
An interesting thing has happened during the COVID that I've noticed about myself. I started really enjoying spending time by myself. I enjoyed not going to cocktail parties, not going out and meeting other people. But what took its place was reading and the computer and new technologies and learning about them, because for the first time, since I didn't have anywhere to go and you couldn't really go anywhere, why not use that as a moment of learning? And I really enjoyed that. And we're now all coming back kind of from the COVID moment, getting back into, going places and doing things and meeting people. And I'm missing a little bit of just spending more time with myself. Does that sound odd? Does that sound weird? But I enjoy people and I enjoy going out. But for the first time in my life, I enjoyed being in the downstairs part of my home where my computers are and just learning all this new technology that's coming forward. I mean, I'm an older guy, but I love the new stuff. And I feel like when I'm down there learning this that I'm 19 years old again and just having a great time. But I didn't have, when I was working and when we were going out, I didn't have time, I found, for me. And so I need to carve out that time in addition to meeting other people and all that. I've just added something else to my life that COVID taught me.
That's really awesome. I think COVID had a big impact on people, and we all learn new things. How important do you think learning is as you continue to age?
Well, if you're not learning, you might as well be dead. And that's exactly how I feel about it. You have to keep learning, every day. That's what I think we're put on this earth for, to be curious, to be opening those books, to watching the important programs on television that are trying to teach us things. And if we're not learning, we're probably dead. And the day that I stop learning will be at my funeral. You know, I have to keep learning. If I'm not learning, then I'm dying. I don't want to die yet.
There's so many things to learn, but let's talk about technology. Before COVID, I noticed a lot of our attendees at our seminars and viewers would say, oh, I don't have a smartphone, I don't have a computer. Yeah. And during COVID, I really realized that this is not good. We've got to encourage everyone to learn technology just for safety and to not be isolated.
Well, I agree with you 100%. You have to learn the technology. You know, we learned how to drive a car. We learned how to use the washer and dryer. We learned how to use the microwave. We can learn. People out there are smart people. And I think some of the technology, though, is a bit intimidating if you in your work never use technology. I understand how it can be a bit intimidating. But what I suggest people do is find someone who's very good and very patient with the technology and just sit down with them some evening and say, you know, I want to learn this new iPhone. I want to figure out how I can call my daughter by just pressing a button, how I can just talk to it and pull up a number. And there are people out there who enjoy teaching that and who want to teach you the new technology. I love going to get my coffee and taking my phone out and just going beep to get my coffee, and it's paid for. You know, I don't have to swipe a card or do anything. It's just so simple. And I think people would get into that if they could get past the intimidation part of it. So I urge people, if you have a grandson or granddaughter who is into the technology, get them in there to teach you. And once you learn it, it's pretty neat. You know, even at 80 years old or 90 years old or whatever age you are. But there's a learning curve, and sometimes you get frustrated, but do it. Just go in there and say, I'm going to learn this sucker. I'm going to learn this phone. I'm going to learn this computer. Because you want to keep in contact with the world. And now you can have the world at your fingertips in your living room.
And it is incredible. And it's, I think, a great legacy, too, to teach your grandchildren and great-grandchildren that, you know, Pop kept learning throughout his life.
Sure.
What type of personal legacy do you hope to leave behind?
You know, I really don't have any thoughts on that because I don't think any person has anything to do with their legacy. You live your life and you do what you wanted to do the best way you could, and other people choose the legacy. And you don't choose the legacy. After I die, people will talk and say, well, he did such and that was good, and he did this and that wasn't too good. But, you know, so they'll choose the legacy. I don't think a human can choose his own legacy. It's important for seniors to write down the important parts of their life, to just sit down and write a letter to the future. And it's also important for the sons and daughters of those of us who are getting older to sit down with us with a camera. Just turn the camera on. We have great technology to record our thoughts and what we sounded like. I get letters from people all the time wanting the Hatteberg's people that I did on their father, their grandfather, grandmother, whatever, because they have no video of that person. They have no recording of their voice. It was never done by the family. And that is their only link to the past. And I think that's sad. You know, when you just a 3-minute story is the only time you get to hear that grandfather or son or daughter or whatever the story was, that's really sad. So families can get together and they can put a camera down in front of this person who they want to record, ask them a million questions about their life, and people want to talk about their life, and they'll be willing participants in that. And there you take that little chip, the card that was in that camera, you put it in a safety deposit box. And that's not for today, it's not for tomorrow, it's for future generations. And you will find that little card will be one of the most treasured and powerful things you can do for future generations.
I'm so glad you mentioned about future generations, because sometimes current generations aren't ready to hear. They might be searching for that later on. And then, of course, for the future generations that aren't even here yet. What are some of the things that you'd like maybe your grandkids and your great-grandkids to know about life?
Well, I'll tell you a little story and try to answer that question. When my mother was 90 years old, she had a birthday. And I took my mother and set her down, and I had my two daughters interview her. And it was so fascinating when my daughters interviewed her, because my mother told my daughters things I had never heard, stories about her life I had never heard, things that had happened to her that I had never heard. And I was just floored that I, as her son, had done interviews with her before. She never told me that, but she would share it with her daughter, with her granddaughters. She would share it with the future. So when people are doing this, if you don't want to do the interview, have a grandkid do the interview, because you'll learn stuff you never knew before.
I'm inspired.
Just a tip.
I'm absolutely inspired. Today, you are continuing to use your craft and your skill and your wisdom. And I think, you mentioned that older people have a lot to share. They have a lot of life lessons.
Right.
So what would be your word to someone out there about sharing their gifts?
Well, I think it's important for family members to share with other family members their life experiences, because we can learn from them. And it's also reversible. I learn from my grandsons and my granddaughter every time I'm with them about something that they're interested in, something that they've experienced. So it's a two-way street. I can impart some wisdom. They, in turn, can also impart wisdom to me. So the age doesn't really matter, but I think it's important for older people to sit down with their kids, their grandkids, and say, this was what was important to me in life, and this is what I learned. And sometimes they'll be listened to, how kids are, and sometimes they won't. But at least they made the effort. And I think in life you have to make the effort to impart your wisdom. And you might be surprised about how it affects the future generations.
I know today you speak to people all over the world about stories that they're interested in. What do people want to hear from you?
People want to hear stories about people just like them. Everyday folks who are not the CEOs of Amazon, who are not flying into space, but people who are going to the grocery store, and people who have to fix their own flat tire, and just regular everyday people, because they associate their lives with the guy next door. That's a real story. Talking about Jeff Bezos going into space, the head of Amazon, it's not real, because we'll never experience that. They'll never experience that. But when you hear the guy down the street talk about what the high Kansas wind did to his roof, that makes sense, because the same thing happened to my roof, So we like to talk to people, and we like to hear about people who are like us, who have the similar lives, who experience similar things, so we can commiserate together about our existence. And I think that's just a natural thing.
There might be people that might think to themselves, well, I really don't have a story to tell, or wisdom or life lessons. What have you found when visiting with people like you have?
I would say, I'll bet you do. An interesting thing happens when I'm out with people and doing a story. People think that reporters on television go into someone's life and ask them 10 million questions until they finally go away. That's not really the way it ever worked with my existence. I've gone on stories and never asked a question. And the reason is, in our time right now, there's a shortage of good listeners. There's a shortage of people who will just sit down with somebody and open their ears and listen to what that person has to say. Everybody wants to talk, very few want to listen. If you open your ears, the information just comes out because people want to talk about their life. I have people tell me things they've never told their spouse. I have people tell me things they've never told another person in their family. I have people tell me things they shouldn't tell me. And I'm proud of that because it's a trust factor that's built up over a very short time with that person, because they detect that you're interested in them, interested in their life as a person. Everybody has a story to tell. My job was simply being their producer to produce this story. And you do that with listening. And as long as you can listen to that person, everybody has a story.
Listening can provide the next great clue in your life, and you could miss out on the Ernie you should know.
That's right.
That impacts the rest of your life.
That's right. Ernie changed my life because he was right. Before I met him, I didn't watch the sunrise. I didn't watch the sunset. I was too busy. That was the problem. And he pointed it out to me. An old man who lived in a hole in the ground. You're too busy, boy. You know, and I didn't see it. It took him to tell me that. So when I go out and do these stories, I'm getting something back from these people. I'm learning so much and having such a great time. When you put a camera on your shoulder and you start talking to people, there's nothing like it. There is nothing like it. It's just the joy of my life.
Well, I'm glad you get to live your life that way.
I am too.
And thank you for being on Empowering Seniors.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for tuning in to Empowering Seniors. If you have questions about any of our topics, you can reach me at 316-686-4500 or at empoweringseniors@kpts.org. Until next time, I'm Catherine Ambrose.
This program is made possible by American Senior Benefits Wichita is all about your peace of mind. We specialize in asset protecting, safeguarding your health, planning your estate, and preserving your freedom of choice. We're here to work through all of this with you. American Senior Benefits Wichita proudly supports PBS Kansas. The Candle Club, a place where friends, food, and music come together. Currently, we offer live entertainment every night except Sundays. Enjoy our delicious specialty appetizers and the Candle Club Signature Prime Rib. More about upcoming events at candleclubwichita.com. Home Health and Hospice of Kansas is a locally owned and community-based provider. We offer quality health care to our patients and families, complete with love, warmth, and compassion. We'll take care of all of the details for you. More information at kansashomehealth.com. Welcome to Cedric Plaza Retirement Community. Our living options are designed to suit your specific needs and activities that you're sure to love. We believe you'll be able to see yourself here, enjoying time with friends and family. For more information, cedricplaza.org.